Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us here tonight. I'd like to begin by thanking Turnstone Press for helping to bring this evening together. We're broadcasting today live from Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm John Taves, the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers, and we're delighted that you could all virtually join us here tonight to celebrate the launch of Sarah Klassen's new poetry collection, The Tree of Life. I won't take up too much of your time right now, but I will let you know that following a reading and a conversation hosted by Joanne Epp, we'll be moving along to some questions, and we hope that you folks out there will have some questions for us. You'll see right at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a Q&A button. Clicking on that will allow you to ask questions, and those questions will be conveyed to Sarah, and she'll respond in kind. Your host for the evening is Joanne Epp. She grew up in central Saskatchewan and still goes back as often as she can. Her poetry has appeared in the New Quarterly, Prairie Fire, Juniper, and other journals. Her first full-length poetry collection, Eigenheim, was published by Turnstone Press in 2015. Married, with 2 grown sons, she spent several years in Ontario and now makes her home in Winnipeg. Please put your virtual hands together for Joanne Epp.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here this evening hosting this event, the launch of Sarah's lovely new book. Sarah Klassen was born in Winnipeg and grew up in the Interlake. She is an accomplished traveler, poet and fiction writer, and her work has won many awards. Sarah has 7 previous books of poetry, including Monstrance and A Curious Beatitude. The Tree of Life, her 8th book, looks like this. Sarah, it's a lovely book. Can you tell us a little bit about, well, can we start with the cover? This looks like a stained glass image. Is that right?
No, actually, it's not a stained glass image. It's a wall hanging. And I first saw this wall hanging in my church, actually. It surprised me when it appeared, apparently on loan. And I looked at it, and I was working on this collection of poetry, and I thought, that's exactly the image that would be good for this book. And so I followed up who had made it, and was able to get permission to use it for the cover. But it was a wall hanging. I never got to see it up close, so I don't know what fabrics were used or materials. But yes, it's lovely. And thanks, Joanne, for your introduction.
Yes, it is. And can you tell us, just as a way of getting into the book, can you tell us a bit about the title? What is The Tree of Life?
Yes, I can. So the tree for me is a powerful symbol. Just yesterday on Facebook, Ariel Gordon showed a picture of how they were cutting down another elm tree in the Wolseley area. It was a sad picture. And Ariel, by the way, also launched a book yesterday about trees. So this is the week of trees. The tree for me is a powerful image. Its roots go down into the ground, into the physical earth, and its branches, if I can put it this way, reach for the heavens. So you get the material, the physical aspect, and the spiritual aspect. And I found that to be a very useful concept for me in this particular book, because I do write about both of them. I think of the tree as bringing the two together. The physical and the spiritual are not necessarily separate or contrary to each other or opposites. They work together. They're sort of melded together, and we are both physical and spiritual beings. And in the poetry that I write, it's pretty much grounded on the physical world, I think, but also I like to write about the spiritual side of life because that is part of us as well. In thinking about this image, I also thought about the fact that many cultures do have a tree in their story, maybe their creation story. The Norse mythology, for instance, has at its center a huge tree. The name begins with Y. I can't pronounce the name of the tree, but it's apparently a huge ash tree. And they take it to be the center of the cosmos. And I like that idea. There is the tree at the hub of things, drawing things toward it or holding all things together. So that is an idea that appeals to me. There's also a children's book. Shel Silverstein wrote this lovely little book that most of you know, The Giving Tree. So the tree is a good thing. It's a giving tree. It gives life. So various cultures have the tree in their stories. My tree, the tree of life, of course, I took from Genesis. In Genesis, there is the tree of life, and it grows beside a river that flows through a garden. This tree is also found in the book of Revelation. So it's at the end of the scriptures. And there, the tree of life, there seem to be many and that grow along a river that flows through a city, in this case. So that's where my image of the tree of life came from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at the beginning and at the end, so like it's the Alpha and the Omega.
Yes. All right. So will you read to us now?
Sure, I'll read some from the first section. First poem I'll read has the title Bird. A morning mild as milk. Open the window and a bird flies in. A bird in the house means a death in the house, but this bird is a finch, and your heart is set on Pilfer Muck, an open road, a destination to reach before the sun goes down. Odd birds, those pilgrims hiking to holy Canterbury, each with a narrative. The gutsy wife of Bath, duplicitous pardoner, eager squire, friar with pious passion. You too, when you come home, feet calloused, face burnt by the sun, will spin stories about the ash heap where the school burned down, rotting roadkill, rising rivers, debris shrouding toppled towers. Flies intone a dirge around bruised eyes of children. You'll say you might have been afraid of death, as every traveler is, had not that thing with feathers traveled with you. When the finch begins to sing, lean hard into the wind and go. And the epilogue to this section, which is called Rise and Go, says that roads are made for journeys, not destinations. And there's also the idea that it's the journey that's important, not the arrival. We might sometimes disagree with that. But anyway, roads are made for journeys, it's true. And this poem is called The Road. We laced our hiking boots, grabbed poles, stowed maps and bottled water in our backpacks. A flag at half-mast made us pause, not halt. A siren screamed. Our children asked, "Where are we going? Can we bring the dog?" We slammed the door, shielded our eyes against the ascending sun. At any point in time, in one hemisphere or the other, a significant percentage of our planet's more than 7 billion people are on the move, traveling on air, land, water, in an overcrowded zodiac, firm or flimsy aircraft, flat on the wind-buffeted top of a container. They walk on washed-out roads, on burning sand, on bleeding feet, cross tangled jungles, climb mountain trails, bearing the unbearable weight of a piece of bread, coins for something to buy, someone to buy off. Children too sick or too little must be carried on top of the weight of fear. The overburdened boat will capsize in the ocean swell. Pirates will climb on board. The plane will stray into forbidden airspace and mysteriously disintegrate. The train will be derailed. Strength will fail. At the border, there will be a wall. We climbed the narrow trail. Streams of clear water trickled down from pools we could not see. We sang traveling songs, told stories about youth and love and bravery. Higher up, the air was thin. Circling silently, the raptors waited for our steps to falter. Clouds covered the sun. Our children were hungry. We came down from the mountain, entered a forest. Sunlight filtered through shimmering aspen leaves, the forest floor gold dappled. We crossed a river and arrived at the desert, the land of thirst. Our eyes burned, dust filled our mouths, under our feet sand shifted. In this Lenten landscape, our children cried for water. We looked around for palm trees and acacia. Where are the cypress trees, we wondered? Where is the tree of life? The pandemic put a pause on travel for quite a while, starting in March. But while I was writing these poems, I always had the idea that the whole planet was a mass of moving humanity, moving from one country to another, from one reason, for reasons of escape or for other reasons. So that came into the poem. And this one's called Travel Advisory. It happens that a traveler clutches his thick cloak tight against the gale force of the north wind. Only the noonday sun's warm rays are able to persuade those rigid fingers to unclench. Without a hint of protest, the cumbersome cloak drops to the ground like a giant beetle's cast-off shell. Our German teacher reads to us an ancient ballad, Die Sonne bringt es an den Tag, in which the sun, pouring warmth and light onto the breakfast table, brings to the man's mind a crime concealed in his heart, a secret that has torn and tormented him as he traveled, brought at last to light. Our teacher says we should never forget this tale of guilt and punishment, never underestimate the sun's power. A sharp bell rings, book slams shut, our tongues turn instantly to English, we race out the door, and there is nothing between us and the sun. The sun is a star, or if you wish, a wheel of fire. In less than 10 minutes, its hot rays reach the place where children play games or huddle to plot in mischief. The mother warns her children, wear a hat, or else you will burn. And I'll read one more from this section. It's called Night. Was it what we carried in our heads, a groove worn over time deep in the brain? Was it tainted blood our hearts pumped night and day until the whole body pulsed with wanting everything on offer? Was it the heart itself, overwrought and desperate? Did darkness make its home there? They say it's darkest before the dawn, or in the deepest ocean trough, from the bottom of the well into which you have fallen, were thrown, or freely left. Raise your eyes to that hemmed-in patch of sky, sunlit by day, by night a pitch-black canopy seeded with tiny stars, crossed by a dying meteor, a wispy comet's tail, a satellite in endless transit. Look, the blinking lights of an aircraft coming home to land.
What I found striking about the poems in this section in particular is that motif of time and how the poems slip between some specific present and a sort of mythical time, or between time and timelessness. I remember having the same feeling about some kinds of folk music, that they seem to take perfectly ordinary, small, everyday things and elevate them into something larger. And it sounds, from what you were saying at the beginning about how the tree is both physical and spiritual, it sounds like that was a conscious thing on your part. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, timelessness, and transcendence, all of these things are good things to think about when it comes to poetry. Yes, the poems in this section are about travel, and we think of time travel. You travel forward in time and back in time and beyond this time into a kind of timelessness. When I think of timelessness and poetry, I think of when when you think you might be writing a description of a scene or a particular experience that you or someone else has had, and you want to catch that moment, and you are working at that. But the idea is to make this personal experience universal. And I think timelessness comes in there, that it's not just for the moment, for this particular incident that happened or experience you had, but it's something that includes the universe, which is a lot to aim for, but that is what a poem does aim for. And then there's the idea of transcending the moment, going beyond the moment. When we work at poetry, we work at the details, the particular details that work to make this scene come alive, or to try to convey an emotion. But it was a Canadian poet, and I can't remember her name, but she once said that a poem has to transcend its particulars. And I think that is important in a poem too. And how do you know when that happens? Or how do you know that you can point to something that is beyond the world with its 24 hours a day, beyond that to a timelessness and a transcendent space? But you strive for it, and it's not easy to explain. You can't sort of memorize a formula and achieve that, but you do try to do that. And I know this poet who said that poem should transcend its particulars also said that a good poem for her makes her want to read it again and write poetry. So that might happen if a poem does achieve transcendence. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now I think you had a couple of poems from the next section.
Okay, yeah, the next section is called Traveling with Children. One of the things that happened as I was writing these poems, children kept entering the poetry, and I kind of liked that. So that one of the themes that you could think, or one of the threads through the book is all the children that are there from the beginning and more or less straight through. So this poem, it's actually one long poem in 5 parts, and I'll just read 2 of the parts. But this is a response to a sermon series in my church. And the series was based on the book of Exodus, where you get the story of the Hebrews escaping from Egypt and traveling for 40 years, wandering in the desert. This was, I couldn't resist the geography with all its imagery. And these were my responses to that sermon series. So I'll read number 4 and 5. Sunday after Sunday, we were at the mercy of a company of preachers, ordained or lay, male or female, old, young, educated or not so much, all of them instructing us to set up or collapse our weathered tents. In that blazing desert, we packed and repacked our possessions, rounded up our grumbling children. We wanted an end to wandering, an end to head counts. We wanted the landscape altered, the sky crammed with clouds able to deliver rain. We wanted water running clear through unfrozen pipes, rust-free, colorless, abundant. The morning Moses split the rock, we were shocked. As if in the middle of a church picnic, the heavens opened. That fierce gush caught us off guard. We expected a hymn, announcements, the benediction. Our children opened their parched mouths and drank. And number 5, one morning, the burning bush became the children's story, their chance to face the sacred, our chance to watch their faces glow as fire blazed, consuming nothing. Take off your shoes, we said, and they did. Trapped in that desert, we learned that fire, when it is hot enough, will melt gold. Out of gold, we reconfigured God. When Moses climbed down finally from the mountain, his face blazed. We raised our hands, shielded the faces of our children, then covered our own.
This continues that theme of time and timelessness in a way, but in a particular way. It's like you're immersed in this story. It's not past, it's present. And I'm wondering when we're able to do that, when we're able to enter into a story in that way, what effect does that have on us?
Yeah. This morning, I happened to read the story of the Catchaway family. For 12 years, they've been looking for Jennifer, their daughter, who has been lost for 12 years, and they're still trying to find her remains. And now the Mating Federation is helping them with this by increasing the reward and so on. It's a heartbreaking story. And what happens when you immerse yourself in a story like that? I think in a story like that, you can't help but learn empathy. It breaks your heart, and you learn to empathize with the people in the story. It's also, if you immerse yourself in a story, you might find yourself in that story. I don't think I could find myself in the story of the Catchaway family. I've never had to face up to anything quite that tragic. But if you think of the story of the wandering in the desert, that is a story that we can find ourselves in that story. First of all, you're dealing with a physical geography, but there's also a spiritual geography. We talk about mountain highs and valley lows and desert experiences using the physical terms of the physical geography, but it also affects our spiritual geography. And I think many people can find themselves directly in a story like that because so many people groups have stories like that of escape from somewhere. Stories of escape are everywhere. We hear them all the time. And there's that link with the story. So yes, I think it does affect us if we stop. We often just hurry past another person's story. But the stories are the best gift anyone, their story. To give us their story is the best gift anyone can give us. And if we pay attention, it does help us become better people, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The next few poems you're going to read are something a little different.
Oh, you're talking about the dream poem. The next section is about dreams?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that is different. So I'll read a couple of poems here. First one's called Blue. There is a place for everyone at the table, be it beside father, mother, those quarreling sisters, that brother who died young, a place saved at one end or the other, along this side or that. Sadly, you have been replaced by a growth of elegant delphiniums blooming blue. Not the blue of sky or lake or flax blossoms, not the blue of forget-me-nots or even your mother's eyes. There is no name for the subtle shade that without warning has taken your place at the table. No words were spoken to comfort you. No one said, you will be missed. Bus. When once again you board the bus, first class, built for comfort and speed, tinted windows, take a look at your fellow travelers, asleep or dreaming. Hard to tell which head holds plans to overthrow the government, terrorize the world, hijack this bus when it leaves the city, heading into open prairie. Hard to tell which bulging bag in the overhead bin is crammed with contraband, drugs, guns, honed knives illicitly obtained, forged documents, explosives ready to detonate. You must not panic. Why not close your eyes? Choose your options. Count sheep, count countries never visited, your very favorite things, your many blessings. The bus driver will turn all the lights off. You must not fear the moonless night, rumors of war in foreign countries, the huge hard hands of the stranger breathing noisily beside you. And one more from this section, it's called Tree. I dreamt a tree, neither pine nor palm, in a country I had never traveled. Storms that decimated poplar, birch, and willow could not disturb its sturdy canopy. Its fruit ripened where the hungry gathered, where refugees and strangers rested. I dreamt a slither in the grass beside a river that flows through a garden. When I awoke, the tree woke with me. Its leaves shone green in vacant spaces of the day, at the crossroads of simplicity and fear, lethargy and reconciliation, alpha and omega.
Ooh.
So that's from the dream section.
Yeah. This feels like a different theme for you. And I found these poems very interesting. They seem to, well, for me at least, they connected with the travel poems in the sense that they have a bit of that disorientation that you can sometimes get when you're in a place you don't know.
Yes, yes, and they do, in a sense, connect with travel, because very often in my dreams, at least, I find myself in a foreign place or getting ready to travel or not able to pack all my things in time. So yes, I think the dreams in some ways connect with travel too. We're not, our consciousness is not static when we sleep. It's going ahead and working out things, I suppose. I don't know much about the psychology of dreams, but I do find them interesting. And I don't use dreams at all in the sense of, human aspiration, the things we desire or the things we strive for. I simply wrote about the dream itself and maybe the reaction to it, or questions it raised or didn't raise.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I think it is a new subject for me. I can't remember that I've written about dreams before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it works in with the other poems in a really interesting way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think you have a bit of an introduction for the one you're going to read next, yes?
Yes, I do. The poem is called Beauty. And this poem was inspired by a book I read. It was called An Interrupted Life. It's the writings of a young woman, Hillison. She lived in Amsterdam. She was a Jewish woman, a young Jewish woman growing up in Amsterdam during World War II. And when the Nazis occupied Amsterdam and started rounding up the Jews, they would take them to a camp they had built outside of Amsterdam called Westerbork. It was a kind of a holding place where these Jews would stay until the ovens further east required more fuel, and then they would be listed to go on a train and travel east. Hillison, before this happened, her life was very ordinary. A young woman who was pretty much self-absorbed, I would say, thinking about her career, the things she wanted to study, her friendships, her romances. But once this happened, she volunteered to help in Westerbork. She willingly went there, and the Nazis tended to use Jews to organize the life in the camps. They gave them the responsibility of doing that. And Eddie volunteered to go there to help people, women with children or older people who needed help. And the second part of the book that I read had her letters from Westerbork. And it was just like she was a different person. Something had happened. She suddenly did not think about herself at all. It was all about helping the other. It was like a miracle to me that there was just this self-absorbed person suddenly became somebody concerned only with helping other people. And it's called Beauty. Well, you will see why it's called Beauty. So I will read that poem. It's in two parts. Beauty, part one. Rats rustling in the dark, odors of death in every corner, but you, Eddie, on your hard bunk, are still among the living. Beyond the barracks, beyond barbed wire, you imagine a field of lupin, an easy leap from that to jasmine blooming beside a window in Amsterdam, where you rode on your bicycle beside the canal, boarded any tram you pleased, strolled evenings with your lover past the skating club. If you cannot sleep, it is not sheep you count, but next day's duties. Soup for the mother of a newborn, rusks for N who cannot eat hot food. Another letter to be written, filched paper, borrowed pencil, to an address in Amsterdam begging for a coat, a loaf of bread, words to a world that will forget, but is not forgotten in Westerbork. In the morning, lupin blooming yellow on the heath, you will rise, take the hand of a terrified child, keep vigil with an old man's fear of death. Barbed wire is real, hatred futile. You refuse to the end to give up the anguish of remembering, feeling, thinking. Dostoevsky, Rilke, and the dear man, no longer with the living, who spoke to you of love, read from the Gospels, words that keep you as you keep them in your heart, underneath the yellow star where you store all the beauty you see everywhere in Westerbork. 2. The train is waiting. You have packed your little Bible, diaries, the Russian grammar book, and Tolstoy. This time it is your name on the list, and you must go east in a baggage car. The overloaded train will leave. You will arrive at a destination you refuse to dread, a place from where no traveler returns. Will you dare tell those whose terror and despair crowd the train that you have looked and always found life filled with meaning? Afterwards, it will be said, she left Westerbork singing. One of the amazing things she wrote before her death was, I can't quote it exactly, but to this effect, that our only moral duty is to find large areas of peace within ourselves and to offer it to the world. And the more we find within ourselves and offer to the world, the more peace there will be in the world. I thought this was quite remarkable, and I found it very moving.
Yes.
Yes, and I was going to read another one from this this section. I think it was, or another poem. Okay, the week. On Monday, you believe beauty will save the world. By midweek, the latest interactive art installation, new music, your most heartfelt poems have accomplished nothing. On Saturday, drizzle, followed by hard rain. Stopped at a red light on Main Street, potholed after winter, you fall prey to panhandlers hoisting rain-dampened cardboard pleas. You avoid eye contact, gesture toward the soup kitchen at the corner. Light changes and you turn toward the greenhouse where the air is redolent with April. A radiance of red geraniums, a tantrum of petunias, celebrity tomatoes guaranteed to ripen early. On Sunday, rain has stopped. Sun rises, and you also rise and raise your voice in gratitude for Earth's bright beauty, for the sky that poured down water. High time to bury fragile roots of seedlings in wet earth. You'll need gloves, a trowel, boots, and sturdy padding for your knees.
That one, well, these last two poems they're from different sections in the book, but they seem to connect through that motif of beauty. And I'm wondering, why does beauty have such a pull on us? What was I thinking? What does beauty do for us?
That's an interesting question. I think we're made to look for beauty and to create beautiful things. I think that's natural, although it happens differently with different people. I think it was Dostoevsky in one of his novels who said, "Beauty will save the world." That's a pretty big claim. One of the characters says that, I believe. It's a pretty big claim. And if that's the case, then we certainly don't have enough beauty in the world these days, because it seems to need a lot of saving. So yeah, I think beauty is very important, and we'd have to define it, which I'm not going to do right at the moment. But there's another, that famous saying, "Beauty is truth, truth, beauty," Keats. And if that's true, they're cut of the same cloth, then I think they share that cloth also with other qualities that are like peace and love and compassion. And with all of those together, you get a beauty that is not superficial. I think that's what we long for. But sometimes we're satisfied with beauty that is very much on the surface.
Yes.
And maybe we have to look for it, like Eddie Hillison in my previous poem, because she found beauty everywhere. And every description of Westerbork shows it was such a bleak camp. She found beauty there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that saved her in a way. It didn't save her from death, but it saved her from despair, for sure.
Yes. So in that sense, beauty can save us in a certain way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So should I move on? Should I read some more? I see there's some questions.
Yes, there are a couple of questions, but I think we can, if you want to read a couple more, that would be fine.
Okay. This one, my poetry isn't often not very lighthearted, I think, but maybe this comes closest to it. It's called Click. A twin-tufted owl sat unperturbed on the corner of a garden fence. I took a picture. End of story? Or a story in search of an ending? Not every narrative begins at the beginning, of course. But we like a good first paragraph, first sentence, first word. Second time I saw the great horned owl, I knew that if I touched the silent bird with my coffee cup or credit card, plastic would click on plastic. Between the two sightings, I posted the picture on Facebook. Now there's nowhere it can't go, nowhere I can hide. Owls are said to be wise. Wisdom cannot be caught on camera, nor does it catch you by surprise. Had the owl blinked, would that have been a better story? Would you have clicked like? And this one string. A creature ablaze with color rides toward you, golden helmet, emerald cloak, a conquering hero, emissary from a nobler world. Perched like a monarch on a man's gray-shirted shoulder, the exotic bird ignores skateboarders, dads with kids on tricycles, dog walkers, city crews planting lilac trees. Won't it fly away, you ask? This isn't an it, the man says, bristling. She's a female yellow-headed Amazon from Guatemala or Belize. A standoff in the heat of Ethiopia. Syrian refugees trapped in camps in Lebanon. Above you, clouds colliding. There's a string attached to one thin leg of the bird, one end looped around the man's middle finger. Where does that phrase, no strings attached, originate? Is the beautiful bird in bondage or secure within the fixed limits? Looks like she's poised for flight, away from the noise of traffic, away from the human shoulder, the leashed dogs. Look at her stretch that golden neck, unfold those bright green feathers. Just watch her scale the perfectly aligned lilac trees, catch an updraft and ascend like the sun to the sky. She's going home to Guatemala or Belize, a free bird trailing a long, thin string. And I'll end actually with the last poem in the book, which is called Green. That tree with a crimson circle on its bark is marked for destruction, doomed by Dutch elm disease. The emerald ash borer has moved into our neighborhood. We are afraid. We scour the internet to find salvation for our city's canopy, a rot-resisting species we might import if our winters weren't so long, our summers not so dry, our resources not spent on fractured infrastructure, drug deaths, healthcare chaos, and how many refugees before we slam the door. The tree we want grows beside streams of water where its roots go deep and drink. Its leaves are always green. From its pinnacle, the eagle watches the world. In its branches, the sparrow builds her nest.
Ooh, I love that one. And I love the way that brings the book full circle. And we're back again to the tree that's in front of us, the tree whose bark we can feel, and the tree of life.
Yes.
Yes. I also like at the end that you have both large and small, the eagle and the sparrow. Room for everything.
Room for everything, yes.
Yes.
The birds of the sky.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We have time for a few questions now, I think. I see there's a few in the Q&A box. I'm going to start with a couple of questions that came in ahead of time from Erica. First question is, are you running out of ideas yet for more new books?
I'm not planning to write another book, but I think I haven't had a problem with running out of ideas. The world is full of ideas.
Yes.
So, that's not to say that I always pick the right ones or do just the ones I do pick, but the short answer is no.
And then she asks, what inspires you daily to keep up your positive attitude?
My positive attitude, oh my goodness. I'm not sure I always have a positive attitude, but I think life is beautiful. I'm very fortunate. So yeah, I have faith, I have friends, I have many good things.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks, Erica, for the questions.
Okay. Oh, here's one from Lois. This, quoting, "Their story is the best gift anyone can give." That was one of your comments. Sarah, you have conveyed so many stories that you have retold from your life's travel. Is it a gift or a burden to carry them? Do you feel a responsibility or a burden to tell and retell our stories? Do you ever feel that they need to be told differently or retold because they weren't heard?
Oh, well, yes, to the last two questions for sure. Do I find it a burden? Well, no, I think stories are a gift, and um, um, it's not, I don't find it a burden. I do find it a sort of a responsibility. And Lois, this uh, many of the stories that I'm telling come from my mother, your grandmother. So I think they're worth telling, and they're worth passing on to the next generation. What was the first part of that question again?
Is it a gift or a burden to carry
Oh,
those
yeah,
stories?
yeah. No, I think it's a gift. I think the stories are a gift, and it's an honor to tell someone else's story or to help that person tell their story.
Thank you. Now, Ariel asked, what were your goals for this collection?
My goals?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my goals were at certain points just to get it finished, um, and get it published, of course, like everyone. I don't set out with a specific theme or a goal. Like your latest books, Ariel, are so focused. All of your books are very focused. Mine are not that way. I sort of, as I go along, I write, and then when it comes to putting a book together, that gets to be a bit of a problem, um, because sometimes they're quite different one from the other, and how do you shape the book itself? That becomes a bit of a problem if I write in that way.
Mm-hmm. So the poems come first and then the themes emerge later?
Sort of, not altogether, because within the sections, there are more definite themes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do tend to write a series of poems about a subject.
Okay. Okay, Lauren asks, do you have any wisdom to offer those of us trying to be creative in these difficult times?
Oh, well, I don't know. I know these are difficult times, and I think people have found so many ways to be creative. People have gardened, they have baked and cooked, and I think just go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a time when beauty is needed. Not all creativity ends up with something that's pretty or that everybody likes. But I think the very act that you're going to make something good is beautiful, can be beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Here's a question from Mary Lou. Did you write poems as a child? And do you remember the first poem you memorized?
No. Oh, memorized? No, I don't. And I certainly did not write poems as a child. I didn't write poems as a teenager. I didn't write poems until I had taught for many years. And very late in life started to write poetry. And then I started because I was a teacher and I had my workspace was covered with papers and tasks to do. And I wanted to write short stories at that point, but a poem would be shorter. I could put all of it on one page.
Yes. And one more question. Evelyn says, Sarah, thanks for another book of poetry. Can you say how you get the inspiration to write a poem? How do the thoughts and images come to you?
Oh, they often come when I'm doing things like walking or riding a bike when I used to ride a bike, or skiing or something like that. Nature is always very inspirational. It may come through a conversation or very often from something I read or hear on the news. There's so much going on around. Yeah, the word inspiration is interesting. It's a kind of an energy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and now Alice asks, so what kept you writing poems after that late start?
What kept me writing? Oh, once I started, I was hooked. I think that happens to poets. Don't you think so, Joanne? I mean, you're a poet.
Well, yes. I remember talking with someone else about writing a few years ago, and how did she put this? Something about the real writers are the ones who can't stop.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
a good measuring stick, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, and here's another one. Sally asks, have you ever been surprised by what came out in a poem?
Have I ever been surprised? Yes, I have. I can't right now. Don't ask me to cite a particular poem, but yes, I think surprises. I think language itself comes to your aid and helps you to write the poem. I think sometimes it's amazing how the right words come at the right time, and that surprises me.
Yeah.
Words you hadn't sort of premeditated or thought a long time about, and they just come.
Mm-hmm. And that's a real gift when it happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Right. And this new book of yours is a real gift to us. So thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. And, you know, one of the things I miss from launches at McNally is, as you were saying beforehand, the cake. So I could not resist baking a little cake.
Oh.
And I wish I could
Okay,
share it.
We'll all rush to your house and you'll serve us a cake.
I could stand on my porch and hand it out. Yeah, so I'm hoping that at some future date we can once again share cake at McNally. But
that would be very nice. Yes.
Yes, but for now, thank you to everyone who was listening in, and thank you to John for hosting us.
Yes, and I want to thank McNally Robinson for their unfailing generosity with all writers, and John, thank you very much. Also, I want to thank Turnstone Press for accepting this book for publication and for seeing it through to the beautiful artifact it is. Thank you all. And thank you all for being here tonight.
And thank you both so very much. Thank you for the gift of this conversation here this evening as well. It's been so thoughtful and insightful. And I'd like to thank you particularly for your kind words and your readings as well, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to hear from you. We will all be meeting up on Joanne's front porch momentarily, where she will be handing out cake. Please do ensure that you keep 6 feet between each one of you as we head there. But I'd also like to point out that the book, Tree of Life, is available at McNally Robinson. Sarah is very kindly going to stop by the store tomorrow, Saturday, to sign some copies. So after that, there will be copies that have been graced by her hand that are available for sale on the shelves. So please do wander in if you'd like one of those. In the spirit of continuing the outpouring of gratitude, I'd like to thank Turnstone again for publishing this lovely collection. I'd like to thank Joanne for her incredible hosting here this evening. It was such a wonderful conversation, and we're very, very grateful for that. And of course, huge thanks to Sarah for writing the words that brought us together here this evening as well. Much gratitude again to Turnstone Press. And yes, thank you all so very much for joining us here tonight. It's lovely to see all your names, even if I can't smile at you in person. So thank you again, and have a lovely night.